guys. Um, we are going to take notes. Please follow along in your math notebook. And what I want you to label this is representing, a long title here, representing rates with, so W slash, tables, and graphs. Okay, so it's really taking the things that we've learned and just keep seeing the bigger picture, seeing the information in a table, seeing the information in a graph, and being able to understand how all of those things connect, okay? So, first thing I want to remind you is our constant rate, okay, is the K in y equals kx. So what this means is this is going to be something that I replace with a number. And when I replace it with a number, in the situation, every x that I would pick, if I multiply by that k, that constant rate, I'll get my y. So for instance, let's say x means minutes. Well, if I have k as $10 per minute, if I put 1 in, 1 times 10 is 10. If I put 2 in, 2 times 10 is 20. And so you see this relationship where 1 minute I get $10, 2 minutes I get $20. And this situation would be written like this: y equals 10x. Okay, so that k, I'm going to keep saying okay because the k is our constant, $10 per minute. Every 10 minutes we get that $10. So we would replace that k with a 10. And this is how we would write that situation, that equation, which, remember, all equations are really just lines, okay? All right, so let's kind of look at an example where we would use this information. And we really want to find another way of thinking of it is the unit rate. This is a unit rate, $10 per 1 minute. I don't want $20 per 2 minutes. I want to know the unit rate. How many in 1 minute? How many where x is 1? That really tells me what my k is, because anything times 1 is back to the 10. So let me show you an example in case I kind of confused you with that last part. So if I have a train, please write, traveling to, let's say, Washington, D.C. in 2 hours. And it takes 120, it's 120 miles away. Sorry. Okay, so in 2 hours, we're going to go 120 miles. Well, like I was saying before, we don't want to know how far we go in 2 hours. We want to know how far we go in 1 hour. That's our unit rate. That's also our constant rate, okay? Because 120 miles per 2 hours, notice how I said that, that is a rate, but we want a unit rate. We want to bring that down to 1. So I'm going to do 120 divided by 2. Okay, there are a whole bunch of different ways to figure out what order you divide in. An easy one is your time is always x, and x is always at the bottom. So it's always the second thing maybe you would, put into a calculator, or what you put at the bottom of the fraction. Another way to tell the order is to try to make a statement. I would say miles per hour. I wouldn't say hours per mile. Okay, so if you can make a statement, miles per hour, so I'm going to write that, please write it also. If I can make that statement, miles per hour, it tells me what order to divide in. Miles divided by hours, miles divided by hours. Okay, it's just hard to make that decision sometimes. So when I do this division, I get 60 miles per 1 hour. And if I want to write that in equation form, I write y equals 60x. This is my k, my constant. It goes in front of x. If I plug in 1 for x, 1 times 60 is 60. And that's why I use 1, the unit rate, the 1 hour, to make this decision. Okay, so I'm going to continue with this y equals 60x. So just keep writing your notes underneath. I'll rewrite it once I erase. So what we want to do, once we've figured all that out, which I know is a lot, we want to take our equation, so y equals 60x, and we want to make a table. When we make a table, we always put x at the top, y at the bottom, or x on the left and y on the right. Just think alphabetical order, okay? And then I'm going to pick some values for x. I'm going to pick 1, 2, 3, 4, really obvious choices, okay? And then I'm going to multiply by this 60. So another way of thinking of it is plugging in that number for x, and this is 60 times x. So 60 times 1, 60. 60 times 2, 120. 60 times 3, 180. 60 times 4, 240. And we can keep going with that. I think that's probably enough points. Sometimes check the problem and see if they give you a specific amount of numbers to pick. And then I can graph this. Because everything I've picked in this constant proportional relationship, I can use 1, 2, 3, 4 because this is in a nice scale because it goes up by the same amount. So I can use 60, 120, 180, 240, and then I graph. Graph your x and then your y. So go to the 1 on x and the 60 on y. Go to the 2 on x and the 120 on y. 3 and 180. 4 and 240, and we know it goes through 0, 0 because it's proportional. All right? So you're really just taking all this data and doing everything that you can with it. You are finding the unit rate, you're plugging it in and writing an equation, you are writing a table to show all the different times in 1 hour, in 2 hours, in 3 hours, in 4 hours, and you're even drawing a graph that's showing this information. Okay, so it's really kind of wrapping this data all up. We're going to do a U try. So I want you to pause as soon as I'm done, and then I will start again and give you the answer, okay? So a shower uses 12 gallons of water in 3 minutes, okay? And so I want you to write an equation. I want you to draw the table and the graph for this situation, okay? So go ahead and pause and do that. All right. Okay, so we don't want to know how many gallons in 3 minutes. We want to know how many, oops, I guess that one doesn't work. Let's try that again. We want to know how many gallons per 1 minute. And so this sentence really tells us what order to divide in. So at 12 over 3, we also know 3 and minutes is time, so that's always our x, and we want to put x at the bottom, okay? As I'll say later, y's over x's. This is your y, this is your x. Okay, so when I divide that, I get 4 gallons per 1 minute. So that means that k is 4, and your equation is y equals 4x. All right, so let's see. I'm going to now make a table and a graph, and let's see if you did that correctly. So again, our equation is y equals 4x. Here's my table. I'm going to pick some x values. I always put x in the top. I put y in the bottom. I know I just said y's over x's, so we always kind of switch the order when we divide. I know it's hard to remember that, but you'll get used to it. So I plug it in. 4 times 1, 4 times 2, 4 times 3, 4 times 4. And again, because it's a good scale, I can use those numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 8, 12, 16. And then I graph those. It's proportional. It goes through 0, 0. And if they ask me to predict how many minutes for 32 gallons, I could use this equation. Okay, so how many minutes for 32 gallons? Well, I can use this equation and make gallons, which is the y, 32 equals 4x. And what times 4 gives me 32? Well, another way to tell is to divide both sides by 4. and we see that X is 8. So it would take 8 minutes to fill 32 gallons. So we can also use our situation to predict either future time is X, so I plug it in for the X, or how many gallons, and that is the Y, so you see I plugged it in for the Y. Okay? All right, well, hopefully this helped, and email me if you have any questions. Thank you.